Hey there, this is Merida Cave Diver, and for this video I wanted to do something a little different. Before I begin though, I want to set some context. Today's video is going to be the first of 3, and what you're seeing now is my dive partner and I heading to the cave entrance. I'm going to jump back to the video in a moment, but I'd like to start off with a little bit of gratitude and deeply thank everyone for commenting on my videos, the questions, the discussions. I just really love it. I'm not trying to make any money doing this, so it's really your participation that means a lot to me. And your participation is what inspired this series, and I'm going to take you on a bit of an exploration today. Okay, so let's get started. What am I up to today? Well, I thought today I would take you on an expedition. I love Mexico, the cenotes, the diving, and I'm really amazed at how big this underground world seems to be. I'm very blessed to be able to show it to you, but selfishly it's turned me into a bit of an explorer. So as we go through this video, I'm going to talk about some of the things that you're seeing on screen, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about my experiences. This is going to be a 3-part series that maps out the 3 phases of this little project, and today's video is just the exploration dive. The next one is going to be a solo tank staging dive, and the last one is going to be a dive where we get to go where no human has ever been before, which between you and me is a very cool feeling. Okay, I'm going to take a little break here from my babbling and get you caught up. Right now my dive partner is setting up a jump line to take us into one of the many caves. As you can probably guess, this is a bit of a crazy intersection, and there's actually another cave that is not currently tied to the main line, so we're going to make a jump. Prior to this, and what you didn't see because of editing, was our deco tank staging. It's a big dive today, and today we're carrying 6 tanks along with 2 black tip DPVs. At the beginning of the dive, we staged a 100% oxygen tank at 6 meters, and we staged a 50% tank at 22 meters. As we move towards the entrance, you're going to notice that we're going into a restriction, and if you're wondering why the footage isn't as great or why my camera seems to be moving all over the place, there's a lot of things going on right now, and I'll try and touch on all of them for you. First, if you watch closely, you may notice that the main cave line is loose, and a loose line through a restriction has the potential to get you tangled, especially with all of this gear. Second, in order for me to fit through here, I needed to detach my scooter from my harness. Unfortunately, the video suffers because the camera is attached to my scooter, and as I move the scooter forward, I'm holding the cave line down with my other hand to keep it in place and to keep it from tangling up in my gear. Talk about a great challenge to start off a dive. But at the same time, this is why we go on a scouting dive first. The other thing that's going on here is largely psychological. There's a fair bit of mental pressure, and I'll share a bit of a funny story with you. This is the first time I'm diving with 4 tanks, a scooter, and through a restriction. As you can imagine, restrictions get a lot smaller the more gear you try and bring through. On the way to the dive site, my partner and I generally talk about the dive and the path that we're going to take. He's done this particular restriction many times before, and he looks at me and he says, "Okay, gringo, in this first restriction, take your time, don't get stuck." Like, seriously, don't get stuck, because with 4 tanks, I'm not sure we can get you out. Now, I'm a confident diver, but I have to tell you, I'm a little nervous, and this is the perfect condition for task overload. But I remain focused, calm, and planned my moves. Okay, so we're out of the restriction, and our original plan is to go to the end of the current line. We want to record how much air this requires, and then plan the next phase of the dive. The goal of the next dive is going to be to extend the main cave line. As we zoom through the cave system, I want to share with you a few things that you can't see through the video. The first is that through the number of transition sequences, you might get a feel for how far we're traveling. So how far is it? Well, without an exact measurement, and honestly I'm too lazy to do the math, we're traveling about 1 or 2 kilometers perpendicular to the surface. So we went straight down, and now we're moving more or less horizontally. I can't do justice to how big these caves are in some places, and my camera can't show you because the darkness literally eats the light. For perspective, let's just say that in some, you could park several semi-trucks horizontally and vertically and still have room. At the same time, the path is not usually flat. There are times where we will enter at 40 meters or 130 feet and go up to say 20 meters and 66 feet. Last but not least, in addition to these massive caverns, you have some really great challenging spaces and restrictions. One of the things I'm hoping to accomplish for you here on this video is to show you the variety of terrain and some pretty cool spots along the route that we're following today. In this section here, it's a great example of the journey taking us up, and according to my dive computer, after we finish this climb, we'll be at about 24 meters or 78 feet. This is a huge change from the entrance. Remember that first restriction? Well, that was 55 meters or 180 feet. From a speed perspective, we're using the blacktip DPV speed of 3, and because of that, we're dividing our air into quarters. 1 tank to get in, 1 tank to get out, and 2 tanks in case there's an emergency. If you've ever wondered why we do this, here's the basic math. While you're running with a DPV, you need to plan on it failing at your furthest point out, and you need to have enough air so that you can swim back. When I solo dive and I have 1 scooter, I break my air down by 1/6. With 2 DPVs, you can break your air down by 1/4 since the odds of them both failing are more rare. When cave diving, you generally break your air down by 1/3, which is why you usually see me with 3 tanks on a solo dive and no scooter. As we make our way up, we've noticed a break in the cave line, so you see my dive partner signaling that we're going to need to make another jump. This allows us to keep the continuity of the dive and sets yet another reminder for us on how to get out. I also happen to be the gear mule, so what you don't see is all of the equipment coming off my back clip. But with that jump done, we're on our way again. I do want to touch back on what we're doing in this dive in case you forgot. This dive is only a scouting dive. We're checking the integrity of the cave line and we're seeing how far into the cave it goes. We both know the original explorer, so we're seeing how far he got and what we need to bring to go further. Okay, so we've reached the end of the line, and unfortunately you can see me changing my lights to signal mode. Sadly, I am out of air on my first tank and we need to turn around. In one way it's good because now we know that to get to the end of the line with a DPV set to 3, it's going to take us 1 full tank. Unfortunately, we were both kind of hoping that we might get to do a little exploring today, but that is not the case. So we begin our trek back. You're also going to notice that the trek back is a lot faster due to the magic of editing, but I'm going to leave some good stuff in here for you to see. You'll notice my partner picking up the spool, and I'm going to head down into the restriction. While we're making our way through the cave, I want to touch on the term task overload. What is it? Why does it matter? Well, it's important for you to know that I do feel very safe underwater. I'm trained, I check my gear, I have redundant systems, but there's also a lot of things to pay attention to. Task overload is when you're focusing on so many things that you either forget some things or you don't really do any of them well. This has the potential to be very dangerous because you can lose buoyancy control, you can breathe the wrong mix of gas, you might miss a cave marker. One of the reasons training and practice are so important is to help a diver become better at doing many things naturally, thereby reducing the amount of mental focus they need to spend on skills that should be relatively automatic. For example, controlling your buoyancy while focusing on tying off a reel. It sounds very simple, but you would be surprised. Now that I think about it, I probably should give my general disclaimer. I appreciate all of you watching, but please note, I am not encouraging you to do what I do. You should not assume that my videos show every part of the journey, and if you don't have the right training, you should not do this at all. I am not instructing, nor am I guiding or attempting to show you how to do this or any cave. At the same time, I also want to take my hat off to the real hardcore heavy explorer people. Over the course of my journey, I've had the incredible privilege to meet and or talk to some people who put me to shame in terms of tech, depth, knowledge, and experience. Each one of them, though, has shared with me, helped me grow, welcomed me, and encouraged me along the way. Okay, so here we are at the very first restriction in the exit. We have poor visibility, 4 tanks, a scooter, and a loose cave line. It's not too bad, but I'm detaching my scooter and rotating my body to keep the line tight along the ground. Once I'm halfway through, I pass over the cave line, rotate again, and keep the line tight against the ceiling. Once we're both out, we're going to fix this section. This little piece of video here gives you an idea of what fixing a cave line looks like. We have lots of air now that we're back at the beginning, And ultimately, what we ended up doing is resecuring the existing line and then adding a new line directly to the intersection. From here, it's going to be a simple trip up to our first stage deco tanks, making the necessary adjustments, and then traveling up to the right depth to switch over to 50% oxygen. As always, I hope you found this really interesting. If so, please don't forget to hit like and the subscribe button, and then stay tuned for part 2, which will be the solo tank staging journey.